The goal of all life is death. That is one of the realities of the world. But it's a truth that's not easily swallowed. And today, I want to look at death through a lens that surprisingly encapsulates its complexity without the need for words. One of the fascinating things about stories is how the subtlest of messages can come from the most colorful of presentations. Today, it came in the form of an online stick figure series that's been on the platform for almost 2 decades. Becker's Animator vs. Animation. Despite its bombastic nature coupled with high-action combat and its seemingly jovial aesthetic, it hones a beautifully complex theme through a false simplicity, not because it's inherently abstract, but because it so quietly pieces together that concept. And what is that concept? Death, defined as the end of the life of a person. However, most media would refer to death as an inherent tragedy. But Becker's 4 core characters reinterpret and portray death in its full facets. And it's not simply the end of life, but also its beginning and middle. When it comes to narratives, death is a multifaceted catalyst that forever changes the tone and atmosphere of both the interpersonal relationships of a character with the environment and other people, and the intrapersonal relationship that character has with themselves and their perception of life. And when it comes to talking about death in narrative stories, it's never simply morality, but rather the chain of events that led up to it and the events that will occur as a result of it. Death doesn't care if a character intends good or bad. And that's why it's important to understand that defining death in such a way can horrendously limit the lens used to observe that character. Death has always had a core portrayal in the series. The gravity of loss, grief, and destruction is ever present and tethered on by core elements. Characters have lost families and changed through grief, some vowing extinction for the sake of vengeance, almost to the point of self-annihilation. Even in moments where death is improbable, the actions of the characters still wish to prevent death by any means necessary. This show respects that despite the existence of resurrection, death is not something to be trifled with. Death in the series is respected through many tones rather than just finality. Resurrection, loss, grief, destruction, carnage, sacrifice, and change. Today, I will be teaching you the lessons of death, portrayed through these 4 different perspectives. Let's begin with the first ever stick figure shown in the series, Victim. Victim was the first ever character in Animation vs. Animator 1. He was nothing more than a creation that gained sentience, drawn by the hand of a creator that had no business taking care of another life form. A creation made solely to test the limitations of what can be done. Death is nothing more than a reset, for though he is crushed and killed, drowned and slaughtered, death is merely a passerby. He will respawn, he will return, he will remember. Victim's relationship with death serves as a reminder that no matter what he does, he will always be in a perpetual cycle. At first, he fights it. He believes in a modicum of resistance against his utter powerlessness. There's a semblance of defiance that he could do against the will of a higher being. Except, there's nothing. Time and time again, he's reminded of the cycle. He will die, he will live, he will suffer. But much like humanity, we strive to conquer powers we don't understand with a level of ignorant grit. Resilience is a beautiful thing, and it's what differentiates survival from living. March 2007 is the moment he forces life to take a bold trajectory. He stands there, unresponsive and numb, no matter what his creator did. His creator leaves him in a box. But years of torture and patient waiting finally pay off, and he escapes the cycle. Much like how humanity develops, learns, and slowly tries to break that cycle of pain. And you know what's sad? His creator doesn't care. He just watches, because to him, This is just a stick figure. In the grand scheme of reality, the universe doesn't care who dies and who lives. It simply moves on. But that feeling of defying fate is the most exhilarating thing that a person can feel. And with that, Victim is finally free. This teaches us that, despite the inevitability of pain in life and the overall futility of it, the resilience to persevere is still the strongest ability that a person has against the game of life and death. And it's in that resilience that you create, learn, and improve. Victim leaves and flees to an entirely new world. And in that new world, he finds hope. He finds friends, purpose, safety, and love. He meets a girl named Mitzi and befriends a guard named Agent. They showed him a world of serenity that isn't out to get him. But it wasn't an easy change, and it's seen in the way that he still sees the shadows of a past that have wronged him. He learns the beauty of creation when he was raised in destruction and pain. Victim hones his ability to fix and build. This is a sign that Victim was simply a victim of circumstances, but he was never a villain. He always had the heart to help. His first instinct with his tools was never to subjugate, even though he was powerful theoretically. It was to right his wrongs and help the villagers with the windmill he accidentally destroyed. It was this ability to fix and improve that he found success. He and Mitzi started improving their clients' work. They were building entire infrastructures. They were content, happy, and finally, Victim left his past behind. At first, it was hard, and the shadow of his abuse always lingered despite the peace. But he tried to move on. He saw a better future and worked to forge it bit by bit with the one he loved. Mitzi showed him kindness, and in that kindness he showed the strongest of wills. Because it takes a special kind of strength to have been subjugated to the worst possible horrors in life by a single creature and never wish revenge upon them. It takes strength to move on with your life after everything they've put you through. A special kind of strength to hold on and live despite every ounce of your existence once telling you it's futile. Victim never made others victims just because he was one. He was afraid, but his heart never made him closed off to others. And that's the worst of it all. They say that grief and loss comes from the happiest of memories. What makes life so painful to live is the threat of it going away at one point. Even worse if it happens without you understanding why it happened. When he finally understands love and joy, it's taken away from him in an instant. I find it symbolic, in a way, that Victim wasn't there to watch Mitzi die. Because unfortunately, that's the reality of life. Death comes so sudden that it doesn't have the courtesy to knock. Mitzi dies during an attack on their home by two new stick figures. Stick figures that were created by the one that tortured him. A returning reminder that no matter how much good he does, and how much he bandages his wounds and moves on, death will catch up to him. As such, Victim channeled that anger and hatred to simply one source. And is he really at fault for feeling that? In his eyes, he tried to be a good person. He left the past behind. He didn't seek revenge. He simply wanted freedom. And what's worse was that he succeeded. He felt for a moment that joy of normalcy after years of torture. Except that wasn't up to him. And all of that just wasn't enough. In his eyes, Alan's creations came back to exact revenge, to drag him back and take every ounce of peace that he had just to remind him of how powerless he is to change fate, the reality that he was a mere victim. Life and death are not in our control. We are simply spectators to the flow of time. The context of the universe doesn't care for our emotions, our improvements, or our self-actualizations. It doesn't matter if Alan was innocent. It doesn't matter if the Chosen One didn't actually want the destruction. It doesn't erase the effects of death. Death isn't an event. It's a reminder. So he remembers. Victim holds onto this pain with an iron grip, channeling it to symbols of who he believes are responsible. Accepting death was never truly black and white. it always was a gray middle ground. You become harsher, you lose the color that the person once gave you. You attempt to fill that hole left behind with other emotions. Even worse, the victim, this is just another iteration of a very familiar suffering. We see him in a dark room mulling over in an empty space with nothing. Because what could he possibly do? The answer is everything. If the world won't let him move on from his past, then he'll stay and fight. He holds onto that information as a weapon. He does what he does best and tries to defy fate as a victim, going as far as torturing and kidnapping anyone that he sees is affiliated with his abuser. But in the end, it's never enough to satiate him, no matter the rage, no matter the retribution. Victim was a kind soul that death had no mercy on. Death doesn't care about morality or fairness. It doesn't subscribe to that human level of cognition. It simply takes and goes as it pleases, and you will do well to remember that. Death also comes with the continuation of life. The Chosen One shows us a fascinating interpretation to death, partly because he never died. Death is a constant in life that while you haven't experienced it, it can be a catalyst for change, or changes becomes its catalyst. The Chosen One's story is how death is a consequence. Death is triggered by events, and events trigger death. The Chosen One is the second stick figure created by Alan in Animator vs. Animation 2. He simply wanted one thing: freedom. Unlike Victim, however, he had power. The Chosen One fought relentlessly, so much so to the point of befriending someone that was designed to kill him. In the end, both of them come to a mutual understanding and break their creator's world. However, the Chosen One represents another interesting duality. It's the question of action versus passivity in your life. Despite his own misguided actions, the Chosen One did eventually hesitate when his newfound friend started terrorizing others and escalating situations beyond what is moral. However, there is a reason why sloth is a deadly sin, regardless of the circumstances that have led to their creations. The Chosen One is as complicit to the crimes as his partner who drew the gun. It doesn't matter if he never shot it. He was at a capacity to stop the shooter in the first place. It was that enabling nature that created a strange perception to life. At that time, the Chosen One valued other people's lives less than his friendship with the Dark Lord. That is a cruel reality that we have to face as humans. How willing are you to break your peace in the face of injustice? How willing are you to define what you find as normal and safe to challenge someone else's status quo? Because of his passivity, he indirectly or directly led to the death and destruction of so many. The Chosen One's power set is exclusively made for defining power incarnate. He controls the elements, not the art of creating like the other two. But when he arrives in Minecraft, it's one of the rare times that he appreciates creation, where the elements that he generated weren't made for combat, but rather for building and making. It's a nice parallel to the Chosen One's neutral nature. Fire may burn, but it also provides warmth. He's been presented with a quiet alternative, where he could question the normalcy of carnage in their lives. Had his conviction been stronger, he would have opposed the Dark Lord's want to press forward. However, he didn't. His blinded definition of freedom and his loyalty to his friendship clouded his judgment. But his conscience does catch up to him. He stops the Dark Lord from infecting all of the internet, and he almost loses himself in battle. In the showdown, the Dark Lord's death continues that cycle, and it begs the question of if they had decided to lead very different lives, would something have changed? However, I did say that death came with more implications. Death is the beginning of the Chosen One's new story. His past actions and Mitzi's death are what sets the stones for his punishment in Season 3. Some say that he didn't kill Mitzi, but that's not the point. The point of his character isn't whether he is innocent or not. It's that the actions that you've done, or what happened around you in the past, will always come back to haunt you no matter what your internal self-actualization is. Even if it were to be confirmed that the Dark Lord was the one that killed Mitzi, it still wouldn't change the death he brought. Because death is not always objective and fair, much like how it didn't care about a victim's path to self-improvement, it doesn't care about the Chosen One's realization to morality. Victim had already targeted him as the perpetrator based on Agent's memories, regardless of actualities. This teaches us that death inflicts consequences and moves pieces that we have no control over. The trajectory of his life, even in the future, is forever changed just because of Mitzi's death. But what about someone that never saw death for its importance? For us, there is this rule of life where if you do not respect death's finality and burden, you will be doomed to its clutches without you realizing it. Hubris and ambition for humans can bring us great technologies that attempt to run from death, but the reality is that time eats all his children in the end. For a character like the Dark Lord who wielded destruction as a badge of honor, death is nothing more than something that he inflicts upon others without realizing that he is susceptible to it as all of them. His goal is death, to destroy. That is all that he has ever done and he was ever made to do from the very beginning. The layers of his character is that there's none, and that's what I find beautiful. There are simply those that wish the world to burn, not out of malice, not out of grief. It is as natural to you as breathing. He finds joy meeting others that have the same potential for destruction as him, valuing them like genuine comrades. I don't think that the Dark Lord was manipulating the Chosen One to follow the path, but he genuinely thought that someone understood his proclivity to it to the point of being a true friend. Death is nothing more than a byproduct of strength, and he doesn't really care for it. When a person doesn't value the integrity of life, death is meaningless to them. The Dark Lord's existence as someone that's built to destroy only has two prerogatives. If anything, he weaponizes death to its apex. Physically, he aims for the erasure of everything. Psychologically, grief is a bargaining chip. Even funnier, he humiliated death by coming back. And to say that someone like him, whose entire existence was made to destroy, has the power of resurrection? That's the ultimate irony. But to fear death to the point of restricting the joys in life is merely survival. And one of the most important lessons to be had is that there is a unique balance between life and death, optimism and nihilism, purpose and futility. The Second Coming shows us that though you're afraid of death, pain, and suffering, there are times that you need to coax yourself out of that paranoia to truly unlock some of the bigger parts of life. The Second Coming is the first of Alan's stick figures who was exposed to a very important lesson: friendship. Unlike the others who came at a time where their maker was cruel for the sake of curiosity, the Second Coming was created in a time of peaceful recreation. The act of drawing was no longer weaponized or hostile, it was meant to express. The Second Coming was also the first one to meet others and form a bond with them upon coming to life. And just as quickly as he met them, he also was faced with the exposure to grief. The Second Coming is afraid of death, especially now that he has seen the death of his friends. The value of life and his existence is exacerbated with community, love, emotion, and stability. He was forged from passion rather than spite, and it's materialized in the way that he has the power of resurrection. In episode 4, he sees his friends deleted for the first time. It was only until he finds out that they were resurrected does he pacify himself. In episode 9, he sees them deleted and stabbed, and this is what unlocks his true powers. In Skyblock, he lets them go the first time to unknown adventures, but when he realizes that they're in danger, he doesn't hesitate to help them. In PvP, he makes the vital mistake of killing Green. In Season 3, he started questioning the safety of their adventures, even to the point of completely lashing out when he believed that one of them endangered the group. His founded fear blinds his judgment to the point of harming someone that simply empathized and acted accordingly. In Season 5, he goes ahead and acts as their leader, preventing them from moving forward if he deems it unsafe. However, we also see the sides to him that try to accommodate this fear of death. The Second Coming learns to balance out his paranoia with enjoying the more painful and reckless hobbies and personalities that they all naturally have. If he were to start inhibiting them in fear of pain, then it would just erase the identity that made them all unique. Their fighting, their love for adventures, their competitions, their curiosities. If he had been only restrictive, he would have never seen these other beautiful parts. This is also why the other members of the Color Gang are important to letting him balance these fears. Yellow and red are catalysts for new experiences, and blue and green are the needed support systems to reassure him for safety. The Second Coming has the most complete perception of death and life, to the point of experiencing that unique balance that his other predecessors couldn't find. But even then, it's as fragile and ever-changing. It shows the humility and experience, and that you can never truly be ready. The connections you make in your life make life all the more valuable, but they also make death all the more present. Your patience must balance out your paranoia. In the end, the Second Coming must come to terms with it. All in all, the value of life is an internally determined aspect. The world is cold and callous, as it is caring and consoling. Life is not meant to be beautiful. Death is not meant to be solitary. What you do with your time is entirely up to you. Your judgment, your perceptions, your resources, your actions and their effects, your indulgences and their consequences. In the end, life is short. 70-something years is but a bucket in the ocean. Some get only a fraction of that whole. Whether you like it or not, it will end. So, what will you do about it?